We cannot afford to drift. We have work to do. We must arise from the dust of self-indulgence and be men. Arise from the dust, my sons.
Make sure to visit the Patreon for Exertus and check out the new rewards, including access to unreleased material, live streams, information archives, private information archives, and portraits and paintings, and photos and scans of physical relics I have documented in Spain that I have not yet uploaded to the internet, including ancient maps that I've found around the world. If you really want, you can even get something in the mail.
Arise from the dust, my sons, and be men.
So I have a video coming soon about Leni Riefenstahl visiting the Nubians, the correlation between the Neanderthal DNA and the pigment gene that we have in mammoths, how we know that that correlates with being Caucasoid. We'll also talk a bit about Madame Blavatsky's occult philosophy of the noble races. I recommend checking out some videos. I recommend checking out the Fear Channel's videos on Lemuria and Hyperborea. Also, I've been taking a look at the Islamic views of slavery, including the pre-Islamic concepts, as well as the Mukataba contract, which allows a slave to purchase their own freedom, and its limitations. I also really quickly wanted to address someone who said that the word slave did not come from Slavic, and say, yes, it does, but also there are other words for being a servant. And by the way, servus, or serb, us, is a sort of chow said in the Slavic countries, like at your service. So there's that. And the Anglo-Saxon word for slave is Briton. In fact, serf comes from serve, which is the same as Serb. Also looking into alternative Sharia, such as Shafi'i, commonly practiced in the parts of the world that we'll be talking about. Also, we'll look deeper into Axis Mundi, or the maypole that spins the Earth, and the gear system of the Earth's clockwork, as well as the post-Spanish Inquisition New Christians, comprised predominantly of Moors and Sephards, and their involvement in the colonization of the New World, and secret continuations after the Spanish Inquisition, including their involvement in the Barbary slave trade, which often comprised the purchasing of Christians, and their correlation with the 3 centuries of Tartar slave raids in the Eastern Slavic lands, where many men, women, and children were stolen and enslaved and human trafficked across the planet out of current Crimea, or otherwise known as Little Tartary, or Kuban Tartary, not to be confused with the Cuban territory, or should it? We'll also be talking about Israeli geneticist Iran El-Hayek, his work at Johns Hopkins University, and the actual genetic evidence for a non-Levantine origin for the Ashkenazi, and a gene comparison with Tartarian Khazar, and a gene comparison with current contemporary Khazar-Tartar DNA, or as I like to call it, the digital Noah's Archive. The last thing I want to talk about, John Levy, another great Golden Gate International Exposition, which was hurrah around the world as pinnacle. The park went through years of planning. However, with the cultural normative of deadlines or die, the park was designed to be torn down instantly, immediately after use, and supposedly was made mostly of canvas, wood, and plaster facades. However, here is a rendering from 1915, which contests the infancy of the foliage as well as the architecture. And here is photo evidence of further wear and dilapidation from the year of assembly. And notably, the Tower of Jewels, which was covered in 100,000 gemstones and pieces of reflective glass with spotlights aimed at 4 corners in order to reflect and illuminate off the grand building at night. The night view of the Jewel Tower was unparalleled, as the tower would literally glow like a neon light bulb, but perhaps that is why it could not last. And so the entire city was demolished, only to be torn down immediately after, except for a few domes and pyramids hidden in mausoleums. A city built on a place called Treasure Island, a man-made island that currently houses a military base, but once not too long ago, Treasure Island looked entirely different. And I can't help but wonder what it would have been like to live in San Francisco in the Gilded Era, because certainly it was once altogether far too grand not to imagine. A city far more like Kiev, ornamented in towers, glass jewels, and domes, and pools, surrounded by statues of gods, entirely put to waste. Well, not entirely, because some of it was saved by a woman named Phoebe Hearst, and yes, She's the mother of William Randolph Hearst, the wife of entrepreneur and Senator George Hearst, and she pioneered the Parent-Teacher Association and the Foundation for the Preservation of Palaces, but also, interestingly enough, converted from Presbyterianism to the Iranian faith of Baha'i, and proceeded to evangelize the religion to the West, in both the Americas and across the British Empire, where her work led to the recognition and eventual recommendation of the Baha'i Church by the United Nations, and they continue to build their temples and eight-pointed stars across the planet to this day, symbolizing all the religions that have come before it as a point that make up its bright star. And she found that the faith really helped her, until she died of the Great Influenza of 1919, like everybody else. And here is Phoebe Hearst's castle, and here are her basements. Have a nice night. Make sure to visit the Patreon for Exertus. If you really want, you can even get something in the mail.